Caitlin Clark, Simone Biles called out by former NCAA athlete. Caitlin Clark and Simone Biles have both been called out by a former NCAA athlete. Clark, the WNBA star, and Biles, the legendary U.S. Olympic gymnast, are two of the most popular female athletes in the world. In fact, in 2025, they might be the two most popular. Clark is undoubtedly the most famous women's basketball player on the planet, and Biles is probably the most famous female Olympian on the planet in 2025. However, a former NCAA athlete is calling both of them out amid the transgender sports debate. Former NCAA swimmer and conservative influencer Riley Gaines is calling out Clark and Biles over the transgender athlete debate. She wants them to speak out to support women's sports. People who I think would be critical to this movement are, of course, people like Caitlin Clark, people like Simone Biles, which I think is definitely a stretch. But these are women who have been able to shatter glass ceilings and break barriers, who are role models to young girls across the country, Gaines told Fox News Digital in an exclusive interview. To have them emphatically say they trans athletes do not belong in women's sports the issue would be solved across all levels, like yesterday, if they were willing to do this. Gaines has made the debate surrounding transgender athletes in women's sports her full-time job since finishing up her college career at Kentucky. Jennifer C., a former U.S. gymnast and Levi's executive, is supportive of Gaines' pitch to Clark and Biles. "We are always encouraging more female athletes to join the fight, and we'd love to work with anyone standing up for the integrity of women's sports. We are in constant conversations with those who have stood up or are considering doing so," she said. "We believe this ends when the athletes defend women's sports in large numbers." Indiana Fever's new additions have Caitlin Clark excited. Is New York Liberty trembling? Caitlin Clark has spent her offseason balancing time between personal interests and closely monitoring the Indiana Fever's efforts to strengthen their roster. Whether it was improving her golf game, supporting her boyfriend Connor McCaffrey and the Butler Bulldogs, or returning to Des Moines to watch her Iowa Hawkeyes, Clark made the most of her time off the court. However, her biggest focus remained on how the Fever would build around her, Aliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell to turn the franchise into a true WNBA contender. As the team executed a series of key signings and trades, Clark took to social media to show her excitement, posting a string of fire emojis to hype up the Fever's impressive offseason. A game-changing offseason for the Indiana Fever. The Fever wasted no time in strengthening their roster. They secured Kelsey Mitchell's return with a one-year contract and made significant acquisitions through trades and free agency. In a three-team deal involving the Phoenix Mercury and Dallas Wings, Indiana landed Jaylen Brown and Sophie Cunningham, two players expected to contribute immediately. Free agency saw even bigger moves as DeWanna Bonner and Natasha Howard joined the team, bringing championship experience and veteran leadership. The Fever then further bolstered their depth by signing Sydney Colson and Brianna Turner, ensuring a well-rounded squad for the upcoming season. These additions have drastically changed expectations for the team. What was once a young, promising roster now has the makings of a legitimate title contender. Even Minnesota Lynx star Courtney Williams acknowledged the transformation, calling the Fever a team that would be scary to face after adding so much talent. Last season, Indiana finished with a 20-20 record, securing the 6th seed in the playoffs before falling to the Connecticut Sun in the first round. While Clark showed her ability to compete at the highest level, the expectations for the upcoming season are far greater. With an upgraded roster, the Fever are no longer just a playoff hopeful, they are part of the championship conversation. Seattle Storm's Lexi Brown pushes back on anti-Clark narrative. Despite Clark's incredible rookie campaign, a lingering narrative suggested that WNBA veterans were not fond of her. Some critics claimed that experienced players resented Clark's presence in the league, leading to an underlying tension. However, Seattle Storm veteran Lexi Brown recently dismissed that notion. Speaking on the Full Circle podcast on February 8, Brown pointed out that the very players who were rumored to dislike Clark's, such as Bonner, Howard, and Cunningham, chose to join the Fever during the offseason. I think all the noise from last year. Obviously, it's gonna be there. But you add a ton of veterans that supposedly were hating on the rookies, but all wanted to go play with her, Brown said. Like, they wasn't hating. She further explained that while players may have been frustrated with constantly having